Okay, so now you understand the importance of how to shoot things in motion, the value of it, and about finding a character. Here's the thing. Most stories that you do probably won't have a movement involved in them unless you're doing detectives in Miami, and even then probably they don't move so much. So it's up to you to make the extra effort in terms of structuring your story to make this happen. Now, what do I mean by that? Let's say that for a video, you're going to do a profile of, well, let's go back to the concert cellist. And she's going to do a recording at 3 o'clock at a studio, and you're all set up with the studio, and you're going to meet her there, which is how most people would do this. And in the old days, when you had to hire a crew and hire a cameraman, it was very expensive, and you paid by the hour. Yeah, you'd book the crew for 3 hours. They would show up. They'd meet you at the studio. You'd shoot her playing the cello. You'd do some sound bites with her, and you would be done. One of the great advantages of being by yourself with this little camera, and it's only your time that matters, is you can shoot much more stuff to make a much more compelling piece about what's essentially the same story. Well, how would you do that? So if you know she's going to go to the rehearsal and be at the rehearsal at 3 o'clock, ask her where she lives. Maybe she lives half an hour away. So then you go over to her house, you say, can I meet you at your house? She goes, sure. So you go in the house, you get her having lunch or whatever she's doing, like we talked about before. Then you get her going up, leaving the house, walking down the stairs, getting in the car or getting on the subway, going to the rehearsal place, coming out of the subway, coming out of the car, walking into the building, coming in, unpacking the cello, and getting ready to play. Now you see what you've done here? We haven't even started on her performance yet, and you already have a vastly richer and far more interesting story than when we just had her playing the cello, right? The more you can get people to move, the more you can incorporate this notion of going somewhere, the more you can build in anticipation that something is going to happen, largely done by motion, the more interesting your story inherently becomes. If I compare the two stories that I gave you, the one where we went to the rehearsal studio and heard her play and did some sound bites, and the one where we went to her at home and picked her up and had to travel and all that stuff, without even seeing them, you would say, well, the one with the travel is obviously more interesting, and it is, because the one with the travel gives you a chance to play with the story. Because now, while she's going somewhere, when we get in the edit, we can begin to bleed in sound bites or even bits of her music. Her music can become an accompaniment to her riding on the subway. And then a couple of sound bites about, I'm really nervous about this rehearsal, my career could live or die based on what's going to happen in the next 20 minutes. You see how much more interesting this is? It's the same exact story. We haven't changed a thing. All we've done is built in this extra half hour at the beginning, which it's your time. You're not paying anybody else to be with you. But look at how much richer the story becomes, and look how much more we can play with this. This is where we begin to enter the world of arc of story. Arc of story is what holds someone's attention from the beginning to the end. If you just show up in this static situation, shoot some sound bites with her, shoot her playing, marry the two things together, even if you shoot it beautifully, it is never going to be as interesting as a story that has internal tension. The internal tension of, will I get there on time? I'm really nervous about this thing that's coming up. And you see how you can begin to weave together her music, kind of anticipated, her sound bites. We get to know her as a character while we're on the subway with her. It's an interesting point. Because riding in a subway or driving in a car is, in a way, it's kind of the heart of banality. It's something we all do. It's very easy to emotionally relate to. It's very easy to shoot visually. But then you can begin to bleed in and get to know her. The audience can get to know her as a character before we get to the event. And this is really important. This is building a relationship between the character and the audience, which is what we're going to talk about next.